She thought she was doing the right thing. She had no idea she was about to become the most dangerous woman in the city, not because of what she could do, but because of what she had seen. It was 11:47 on a Tuesday night when Neva Aldrich almost walked past the boy. She almost did it. She was tired in the way that only a double shift at a diner can make you tired. The kind of tired that settles into your knees and your lower back and the space behind your eyes. She had $42 in tips in her apron pocket, a blister forming on her left heel, and exactly one thought in her head: get to the bus stop before the 11:52 pulled away. She was 3 blocks from Tully's, the corner diner where she'd worked for the past 2 years, and the night air smelled like rain and exhaust and something fried from the Korean place on the corner. She almost kept walking, but the boy made a sound. It wasn't a cry. It wasn't loud enough to be a cry. It was something smaller, a wet, broken exhale, like a person trying to breathe around something stuck in their chest. And Neva stopped because she had a younger brother once, and she knew that sound. She turned. He was sitting against the base of a fire hydrant, half on the curb, half off, maybe 7 years old. Dark hair, expensive sneakers, the kind with the little light-up soles that blink when you walk. His face was pale in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. One of his hands was pressed against the concrete like he was trying to push himself up and couldn't. Neva dropped to her knees beside him. "Hey," she kept her voice low, the way you do with small animals and children who are frightened. "Hey, can you hear me? What's your name?" The boy blinked. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. "My stomach," he whispered. "It hurts really bad." She scanned him fast. No visible blood, no obvious injury. His lips had a faint bluish tinge that made her stomach drop. She'd taken a first aid course 2 years ago. When her building's super mentioned there was a stipend for it. She remembered exactly 3 things from it. One of them was what cyanosis looked like. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I've got you." She pulled her phone out and called 911. She gave the address, described the boy, described the symptoms. The dispatcher told her an ambulance was 8 minutes out and to keep him still and keep him talking. 8 minutes. She looked at the boy. He was fading. She could see it, that slow withdrawal behind the eyes, the way consciousness starts to retreat like a tide going out. "What's your name?" she asked again. "Nico," he said. "I want my dad." "Okay. Okay, Nico." She glanced around the sidewalk. There was no one with him. No parent, no caretaker, no one who could have possibly been watching this child. "Is your dad nearby? Do you know where he is?" The boy's eyes drifted shut. She touched his cheek, still warm, thank God, and he opened them again. "He's at the meeting," Nico murmured. "He's always at the meeting on Tuesdays. Does he have a phone? Do you know his number?" The boy's hand moved weakly toward his jacket pocket. Neva reached in for him and found a slim black phone. A burner, old model, no passcode. She unlocked it and found the contact list. There were only 4 entries, no names, just initials and numbers. She stared at the screen, then she pressed the one labeled simply D. It rang twice. "This line is for emergencies only." The voice on the other end was quiet, unhurried, and carried the particular stillness of a man who had not been surprised in a very long time. It was not a warm voice. It was not unkind, exactly. It was simply the voice of someone who had learned to keep everything behind a wall. "Whoever you are, you have 30 seconds to explain why you're calling this number." Neva did not waste any of those 30 seconds. "My name is Neva Aldrich. I'm a waitress. I found a boy on the sidewalk on the corner of Mercer and Canal. His name is Nico. He says he wants his dad. His lips are turning blue and he can barely stay conscious. I've called an ambulance. It's 8 minutes out. I don't know who you are, but this was the only phone I could find, and I thought you should know." Silence. For 2 full seconds, the man on the other end said nothing, and in those 2 seconds, something shifted in the quality of the silence, like a temperature change, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. "Which hospital will they take him to?" "Downtown General is closest. Don't leave him." A pause. "Do you understand me? Do not leave that boy alone." "I wasn't planning to," Neva said. The line went dead. She had no idea that she had just called Stellan Voss. She had no idea that Stellan Voss ran the Eastern Seaboard's most sophisticated private security and enforcement network, the kind that governments contracted quietly and competitors learned not to cross twice. She had no idea that the Tuesday meetings were sit-downs with men who settled disputes that never appeared in any courtroom. She had no idea that Stellan Voss had not allowed anyone outside his inner circle to hear fear in his voice in 11 years. She had no idea that in the moment after she said his lips are turning blue, she had heard it anyway. By the time the ambulance arrived, Nico's pulse was still present but thready. The paramedics moved fast and professional, and Neva answered their questions in the bright strobing light of the ambulance bay, while one of them started an IV and the other radioed the hospital. They asked if she was the mother. She said no. They asked if she knew what he'd eaten. She said she'd only found him 6 minutes ago. She rode with them anyway. Nobody stopped her. Downtown General's ER at midnight was its own particular kind of organized chaos. Fluorescent light and rolling carts, and the smell of antiseptic over something older and more tired underneath. They took Nico through a set of swinging doors, and a nurse told Neva she could wait in the blue chairs by the window. She sat down. She was still wearing her apron. She had a pen tucked behind her ear from the diner. She thought, absurdly, that she should text her roommate. She thought she should probably eat something. She thought about the 11:52 bus, which she had definitely missed, and the 12:30, which was the last one. She was still thinking about the bus when the ER doors opened and 6 men walked in, not like normal people walk in, like something that has decided to enter a room and is not particularly interested in what that room thinks about it. They moved in a loose formation, 2 in front, 2 behind, 1 at each door, and in the center of that formation was a man who made the formation seem like the most natural thing in the world. He was tall, not in a conspicuous way, in the way of a person who has never had to make themselves smaller for anyone else. Dark coat, no tie, a slight loosening at the collar that looked less like carelessness and more like controlled permission to breathe. His jaw was set. His eyes, dark, very still, moved across the room in one long sweep and landed on Neva in the blue chair by the window. He walked straight toward her. The nurses at the desk watched. Nobody. Neva Aldrich. It wasn't a question. She stood up. She didn't know why. Some instinct older than reason. Yes, Stellan Voss. He didn't extend his hand. He looked at her the way people look at something unexpected, carefully, without committing to an interpretation. Where is my son? Through those doors. She pointed. They took him about 20 minutes ago. The paramedics thought it might be a reaction to something he ingested. They ran a tox screen. Something moved through Stellan Voss's expression. So fast, so tightly controlled, that if Neva hadn't been watching his eyes, she would have missed it entirely. It was not fear. It was the cousin of fear, the version of it that men like him had learned to transform into action. He turned to one of the men behind him and spoke in a low voice. The man nodded once and disappeared through the swinging doors without pausing at the desk. Stellan turned back to Neva. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." She told him. She was good at it. Years of taking orders at the counter had given her the ability to relay information quickly and without embellishment. She told him about walking home, the sound the boy made, the way she found him, the phone in his pocket. She described his symptoms. She described what she'd told the dispatcher. She told him she'd ridden in the ambulance because she didn't want him to be alone. Stellan Voss listened without interrupting. This, she would learn later, was unusual. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You said his lips were blue when you found him." "Yes." "How long do you think he'd been there?" "I don't know." The concrete under him was damp, not wet, but damp. Could have been 15 minutes, could have been more. He nodded slowly. The ER doors swung open and one of his men came back through, bent towards Stellan and murmured something. Stellan's expression didn't change, but his stillness changed quality, became harder, colder, the stillness of a man who has received confirmation of something he'd hoped to be wrong about. "Mr. Voss," Neva said carefully. "Is he going to be okay?" Stellan looked at her. For a moment she had the distinct impression that he was deciding something, not about Nico but about her, about how much to say, how much to acknowledge, how much to let her see. "The doctors believe so," he said. "He'll need to be monitored overnight." "Good." She reached for her bag. "Then I'll go. Sit down, Ms. Aldrich." She looked at him. "Please," he added, and the word came out like something that hadn't been used in a while, not rusty exactly, but careful. like he wasn't entirely sure it still worked. She sat down. Stellan Voss sat down across from her. Behind him, his men redistributed themselves around the room in a pattern that looked casual and wasn't. A doctor appeared through the doors, spoke quietly with one of the men, and was guided towards Stellan. Neva watched Stellan stand, listen, ask 2 precise questions, receive 2 answers, and sit back down, all in the space of 90 seconds. The doctor left looking slightly dazed, the way people sometimes do after talking to someone who operates at a different frequency than everyone around them. "He's stable," Stellan said. "They're moving him to a room in an hour." "I'm glad," Neva said. And she meant it, simply and completely, in the way of someone who has no stake in the outcome, beyond the fact that a small child was safe. Stellan Voss watched her say it. She had the feeling he was checking it for something. For the angle, for the ask, for the thing people usually wanted when they did something like what she'd done tonight. He didn't seem to find it. "You can go to him now," she said quietly. "I'll get out of your way." "Nico asked for you." She blinked. "He doesn't know me. He knows you stayed." Stellan held her gaze. "He told the nurse, the lady with the pen behind her ear. He wanted to know if you were still here." Neva reached up and touched the pen she'd forgotten was there. Something in her chest shifted, that particular softness that children have the power to produce without trying. "Of course," she said. "I'll say goodnight." She said goodnight to Nico, who was small and pale in a hospital bed 3 sizes too big for him, with an IV taped to the inside of his elbow and a cartoon on the television, and a look of 7-year-old dignity that almost broke her heart. He asked if she would come back. She said she'd try. He held out his hand, very formally, the way someone had clearly taught him, and she shook it. She was back in the hallway, pulling on her jacket, when Stellan's voice came from behind her. "Who picked him up from school today?" She turned. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at something in the middle distance, jaw tight. "I don't know," she said. "I only found him on the corner. His regular driver called in sick this afternoon." He said it quietly, like he was thinking aloud, and then something shuddered behind his eyes and he stopped. He glanced at her. "Forgive me." "Don't." She said it before she thought about it. "Don't apologize for being worried about your son." He looked at her for a long moment. "How do you get home?" he asked. "Bus. At this hour, it's a 12-minute ride." He didn't argue. But as she pushed through the ER doors into the night, one of the quiet men fell into step behind her, not close enough to be intrusive, far enough to be deniable. She didn't mention it. She stood at the bus stop and the man stood at the corner. The bus came. She got on. The man watched it pull away and then spoke into something at his collar. She found out the next morning that Stellan Voss had paid her rent for 3 months. The envelope was under her door when she woke up. No note, just the money, in cash, and a card with a phone number written in the kind of handwriting that belongs to a person who means everything they write. She was going to return it. She was absolutely 100% going to return it. She was still thinking about how to return it when she got to Tully's for the morning shift and found 2 men in dark coats sitting at the counter, ordering coffee and eggs, watching the door. They were there the next day too, and the day after. On the 4th day, one of them slid a note across the counter with his check. It said, "Mr. Voss asks if you're free on Thursday evening. There's something he'd like to discuss." Neva looked at the note. She looked at the man. She thought about the money under her door. She thought about Nico's hand extended toward her in that hospital bed. She thought about Stellan Voss saying please, like it was a word he'd had to practice. She wrote yes on the back of the note and slid it back. Thursday arrived the way significant evenings tend to, faster than expected, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Neva wore the blue dress she kept for interviews and funerals, and moments when she felt like she needed to be taken seriously. She met Stellan Voss at a restaurant she'd never been to, in a neighborhood she rarely had reason to visit, at a table that had clearly been reserved in the kind of way that means it is always reserved. He was already there when she arrived. He stood when she walked in, an old habit, she thought. The gesture of someone who'd been taught formality early and kept it as a survival mechanism, a way of controlling what the room thought of him before he'd said a word. They ordered. They ate. He asked about her, not in the way of someone making conversation, but in the way of someone gathering information they've decided matters. She talked about the diner, about the 2 years before it when she'd been putting her younger sister through community college, about growing up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens with a mother who worked nights. She didn't make it dramatic. It wasn't dramatic. It was just the shape of a life. He listened in that way of his, focused, specific. Then he said, "Nico's been asking about you every day, I know." She paused. "I called the hospital to check on him. Twice. I didn't leave my name, I know," said Stellan Voss. She looked up, something in his expression, not quite a smile, not quite not. The hospital has excellent security, but not excellent enough. He turned his glass slowly on the white tablecloth. "I want to tell you what I found out about Tuesday night." She waited. "Nico's driver didn't call in sick," Stellan said. "He was paid to be unavailable. Someone arranged for Nico to be left without a ride, without supervision, in a neighborhood he didn't know, at a time when a 7-year-old boy walking alone at night becomes manageable. There was something in his water bottle, not enough to be immediately fatal, enough to make him easy to move." Neva put down her fork. "Someone was coming for him," Stellan continued. "They were 30 seconds away when you stopped." He looked at her steadily. "You interfered with something that was already in motion. The people who arranged it are aware that someone intervened. They don't yet know who." The restaurant noise carried on around them, the soft percussion of silverware and low conversation, and the sound of wine being poured into glasses. Neva thought about what he'd just said. She turned it over with the careful precision of someone who has learned to assess bad news without drowning in it. "You're telling me I'm in danger," she said. "I'm telling you that you may be in danger," Stellan said. "And I'm telling you that I intend to make sure you aren't." He said it simply, without emphasis, the way people state facts that they consider settled. "The men at the diner this week were mine. I should have told you sooner. I apologize for that. You sent me bodyguards without telling me. I sent you precaution without alarming you prematurely." A pause. In retrospect, that was a poor balance. She almost laughed. She pressed her lips together and didn't. "What do you want from me, Mr. Voss?" He was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that means the answer matters. "I want to know if you'll let me protect you," he said, "until this is resolved. Not permanently. Not intrusively. The men at the diner will remain. There will be someone on your block overnight. You'll go about your life, but you'll have coverage, and when it's resolved, then you go back to your life. Unimpeded. With my gratitude, which, for what it's worth, I don't extend lightly." Neva picked up her fork again. She ate a bite of food she didn't taste. She thought about the pen behind her ear, and the boy on the sidewalk, and the money under her door. She thought about what it meant to be a woman alone in a city, and what it meant to have someone say, "I will make sure nothing happens to you," and mean it, fully, with resources she could not begin to calculate. "One condition," she said. He waited. "Tell me when something changes. Don't manage me." She met his eyes. "I'm not fragile, Mr. Voss. I just want to know what I'm standing in the middle of." For the first time that evening, Stellan Voss smiled. It was small and careful, and arrived like something that had been waiting for the right moment. "Agreed," he said. The next 2 weeks moved like water, mostly calm, with a current underneath. Neva worked her shifts. She served coffee and eggs and the occasional club sandwich to the 2 men at the counter who she'd started calling, privately, only to herself, the Tuesday guys. She took her usual bus home. She bought groceries. She called her sister on Sundays, but she was paying attention in a different way now. She noticed the black sedan that idled on her block at night and was gone by morning. She noticed that the alley entrance to Tully's, which had always felt slightly unnerving, now had a camera mounted above the door that definitely hadn't been there before. She noticed that her building's front door lock, which had been broken for 6 weeks, was suddenly fixed. She noticed these things, and she did not feel like a prisoner. She felt, for the first time in a long time, like someone who had been decided about, like someone was keeping track of. It was a Thursday morning, 2.5 weeks after the restaurant dinner, when one of the Tuesday guys came to the counter without sitting down. "Mrs. Aldrich." He was keeping his voice low. "We need you to come with us." Neva set down the coffee pot. "Now. Mr. Voss has asked for you specifically. There's been a development." She untied her apron. She didn't ask questions. She'd agreed to be told things. It cut both ways. Stellan's office was on the 41st floor of a building in the financial district, the kind of office where the windows are the whole wall and you can see everything and feel like you are standing above the city instead of inside it. He was behind his desk when she came in, and he looked up with an expression that she'd started to learn, the controlled one, the one he showed when something had happened that he needed to stay in front of. They identified you, he said. No preamble. That, too, she had come to expect. She sat down in the chair across from him. How? The hospital. Security footage. They have access to someone on the inside. He was steady, watching her reaction. Your full name is known, your address out, your employer. They ran you last night. Neva absorbed this. Who is they? She said. You've been careful not to say. Stellan was quiet for a moment. In that moment she could see the calculation, not duplicity, not secrecy for its own sake, but the genuine weight of someone deciding how much of one world to let into another. A man named Hargrove, he said at last. Calder Hargrove. He runs import operations, legitimate on the surface, other things underneath. We have been in a dispute over a contract for the better part of a year. Nico was meant to be leverage, a way to make me compliant. And the person on the inside who arranged the driver has been located. Stellan said flatly. The flatness said everything the words didn't. Mr. Voss. She leaned forward slightly. What happens now? He said. Is that Hargrove made a mistake? He moved against my son, and he failed, and now he has drawn your name into a situation you had no part in creating. He held her gaze. I don't allow people who protect my family to be punished for it. I didn't protect your family, Neva said. I found a little boy on a sidewalk. That is protecting my family, Stellan said quietly. She looked at him, he looked back. The 41st floor was very quiet. What do you need from me? She said. Nothing. This part is mine to handle, he said it simply. What I need for you is for you to spend the next 72 hours somewhere other than your apartment and your workplace. After that, he paused. After that, it will be settled. Settled how? The corner of his mouth moved, not a smile, the acknowledgement of a question he respected and wouldn't answer fully. In the way such things are settled, he said, without loose ends, without collateral, without anyone who didn't choose this life being harmed at by it. She believed him. She couldn't entirely explain why, except that she had been watching him for 3 weeks. Watching the way he spoke to his men, watching the way his voice changed when anyone mentioned Nico, watching the careful space between what he controlled and what he let breathe, and she believed him. Okay, she said. 72 hours. There's a place on the coast. Private. It's comfortable. He paused. Nico will be there. He'd. Another pause. Smaller this time. She nodded once. Then I'll go. She packed a bag that evening. One of the Tuesday guys drove her north, along the coast into the early dark of a November evening, until the city was behind them and the road ran alongside the ocean, and the sound of traffic was replaced by the sound of water. The house was stone and glass, and far enough from any other light that the stars were visible, fully visible, in a way they never were from Queens. Nico was waiting at the door. He was wearing pajamas and holding a book, and he said with great seriousness, I saved you the room with the biggest window. She spent 3 days on the coast. She read. She walked on the beach in the November cold. Her jacket zipped to her chin. She played cards with Nico in the afternoons. Go fish, mostly, because he was merciless at war, and she was tired of losing. She called her sister. She did not watch the news. On the 3rd evening, Stellan arrived. He came in from the cold looking like a man who had completed something heavy, not unwell, not damaged, but lighter in the particular way of someone who has put down a weight they'd been carrying for a while. He stopped in the doorway of the front room, where Neva was sitting by the window with a book and a cup of tea. It's done. She looked up. Hargrove? Will not be a problem. He held her gaze for a long moment. You're safe, completely, from this point forward. She set down the book. She looked at the man in the doorway, the man who had learned not to show fear, who said please like it cost him something, who had sent people to watch over her without alarming her, and paid her rent without leaving his name, and let his 7-year-old son tell her which room had the biggest window. And now, she said. He came and sat down across from her. in the same chair Nico had occupied all afternoon, with the same economy of motion that meant he was somewhere he didn't mind being. Now, he said, you go back to your life, as promised. And the Tuesday guys, something moved through his expression. That, he said carefully, is your decision. She thought about it. She looked out the window at the dark ocean, the cold November stars, the line where the sky met the water so far out that you couldn't see it so much as sense it. I think, she said slowly, that I'd still like coffee from Tully's to be an option. It will be, Stellan said. And I think, she continued, a little more quietly, that Nico should probably have my actual phone number, in case of emergencies. Stellan was quiet for a moment. That seems practical, he said. She turned from the window, and I think, for what it's worth, that whoever decided you needed to be controlled by threatening your son made a very significant miscalculation. Yes, Stellan said simply. They did. She reached for her tea. He didn't move. Outside, the ocean kept on with its business, indifferent and vast and very old. Inside, the fire crackled and the light was warm, and somewhere down the hall, a 7-year-old boy was asleep in a room with a window that probably wasn't even the biggest one. Mr. Voss, Neva said. Stellan. She looked at him. Stellan. She tried it carefully, the way you try a word in a language you're still learning. Do you actually have Tuesday meetings every week? Yes. And do they always run this late? The corner of his mouth lifted, slightly, carefully, in the particular way of a man relearning something he'd forgotten was allowed. Not always, he said. She nodded. She looked back at the fire. He stayed where he was. The night outside was very still, and in that stillness, without ceremony, without declaration, without any of the usual noise that marks the beginning of something, something began. And that's where we're going to leave them tonight, right there in that quiet room by the sea. Neva Aldrich, who almost walked past a little boy on a Tuesday night, and Stellan Voss, who forgot how to let people in until one showed up anyway and stayed. If you felt something watching these two find each other, drop a coup in the comments. And if you've ever done something small and ordinary that turned out to change everything, tell me about it below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe to Rosie's Romance Library for new stories every week. And while you're here, what do you think happens next for Neva and Stellan? Does she ever go back to Tully's? Does Nico finally beat her at war? Leave your best guess in the comments. I'll see you in the next story.